am your main man, today coming back to talk about monster ecology. Manticore, you've been screaming, demanding, crying, Talos hears you high upon the clouds, and like a storm driven in. Baby, we're going to be talking about the Manticore, and special thanks to my lovely assistant, Sexy Manticore. That's right, I went to look for a nice, cool, scary Conan-esque sort of Manticore picture, and I find a Japan-made Sexy Manticore, which I thought was very funny. And hopefully, you'll get a laugh out of that, too. So, there we go. Before I get into the video, I had a enormous deluge of birthday well wishes recently. So I haven't really made very many videos, so I wanted to just take a time to thank everyone in the Barbarian Horde for your well wishes, for the kindness and the time that you took to extend to me the happy birthday wishes, and I appreciate every one of those. The people on all over the place, you understand, baby, bringing in all those fine birthday wishes. So thank you very much for each and every one of those. Certainly meant a lot to me this tumultuous time, you understand. But today we're going to talk about yet another monster ecology video. It had loads of people, monster ecology, monster ecology, monster ecology, monster ecology. We want more monster ecology. And now we're going to just talk about the way I kind of come to the root of monster ecology. When I want to ecologize a monster, I go back and look at the mythological origins. I don't grab a Gygaxian tome and go, I guess this is where we start. No. Not that you can't get that, not that you can't import those ideas and look what other writers have done with it. Look at how they've changed it from mythological to fantastic to the fantasy realms. Because remember, there's a Bifrost bridge in between those two platitudes, you understand? But when we look at that original conception, that primitive mind that's wrapped around the idea in question, well, we can really have a great concept of what that monster we're getting at is, what the initial fear, what the initial psychology that drove the mind to create this fabrication, this fictitious idea, or where the historical reports come. Many of these monsters are essentially really no more than, you know, a misunderstanding of lions or tigers or elephants, or actual real reports of creatures. Of course, sea serpents, krakens, we know those things are real. A kraken is just a giant squid. Sailors had seen these things and reported them many, many years ago, and they go, oh, well, that's just like a dragon. And go look at an oarfish and tell me that's not a sea serpent. If you saw that back in your log boat 1,000 years ago, you go, oh, God, that's a sea serpent. And you're damn right it's a sea serpent then and now. When you got 19 people have to hold the thing up and just, oh, you want to stick it right in his face and slap its mama for making it so ugly. So, that aside, let's get back to the topic at hand, Manticore. Now, the Manticore is what, in the common parlance, is called a chimera, but, you know, a hybrid creature of yore. The Manticore really starts off with a tiger, sometimes a lion. It's Persian in his belief. And, of course, we know another powerful monster that's Persian. That's right, Baba. The Iron Sheik Iran Tehran is the oldest country in the world, and that is the Manticore. It haunts the windswept peaks of Persia. It haunts the deserts. It haunts the desolate places. And I find the Manticore. I take him. I grab him. I camel clutch. I break his fucking back and make him humble. And in the Manticore, it will serve the Iron Sheik for 1 year and 1 day. And when that comes out, I break it back again and make him humble. And then he does as I said to him, because he knows the greatest power in Persia is the Iron Sheik. But, so that is, I'm sorry, I could not resist bringing the old Khazara Ilviseri impersonation back out, baby, one more time. Because, you know, the monster it is Persian, and really introduced to the European canon of monsterology by the Greeks. The monster really raged all over from India to Persia to Greece, and it's similar to a lot of the other chimeras, to the griffin, to the sphinx, to these strange monsters that we have. Now, the heart of the matter for the Manticore is a great cat, whether it's a lion or a tiger. And in D&D, they tend to favor the lion. But, you know, when you throw out there as a tiger, you could all of a sudden quite have a different flair to it. If you give it a bit of a dressing up in a mythical Indian aspect and bring that to it. You know, the enforcer of the cult of the Thuggies, or you know, you bring it there with your proto-shiki baby. And for those of you who haven't seen it, go watch the Adult Swim Robot Chicken with the actual real Iron Sheik making everything humble. And I've watched that many times, and definitely get a hold of that. And well worth the view, very entertaining. Now, so you can bring it up that way, you know, with the flying carpets and the great rocks and Sinbad and the Iron Sheik and everything there from Arabia, mythical, fictional. Bring that sort of flavor to it. Not to say, you know, bring your Al-Qadim, but if you're going to run Al-Qadim, if you're going to run fantasy Arabia, fantasy Persia, if you're going to run a campaign even as far away as Egypt or in India, or Greco-Roman, you know, out there with the far forbidden places and the secret sylvan glens in those wind-swept peaks or those moon-drenched isles. The Manticore there in those rare spaces could certainly be a treat, a wonderful thing to have your Herculean-style adventurers out facing and battling. And one Herculean-style adventurer by the name of Valorian did fight out there in those same Serpent Hills, a Manticore. And there was much battling with the Manticore. The Manticore ripped and savaged him, nearly ripping one of his arms off of the Manticore's vicious fangs. And eventually, the Manticore had his jaw broken and was skinned, and a Manticore cloak was worn. So the Manticore, with the body of a lion, with the body of a tiger, and you want to bring that dressing in. You want to make it different. You want to, you know, because a lion and a tiger do have fairly different physiques, and you can bring that across to really make the beast different. Now, one of the other unifying factors is typically the head of a human. Now, I always like that AD&D 2nd edition picture of the Manticore. It has like that big dwarf head on it. It's like this dwarf with I don't know, it looks like a brat's doll or something. The head is so disproportionately larger than the body, and it has this enormous beard on it, and it just looked really cool to me. I quite like that. In the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, or maybe it's just called Dungeons & Dragons, in the video game, which is like a double dragon style, they also had a Manticore you'd fight, which is great, and it'd fly around and so forth. So those are really your two components. It has anywhere from, like, you could have like a genius level intellect to, you know, basically being severely learning impaired by human standard, being a quasi-sapient creature, or even an animal, but with the ability to speak with I really like having a big booming voice, you know. Just picture your main man with the body of a lion, you know, with the accent of the Iron Sheik just running wild. I know that's really a hard stretch, isn't it? And it shouldn't be, and I'm sure it's not. So the Manticore also has a components. You know, you have the tail, and what do we want to make the tail? It could just be like big cat's tail, but it could be a scorpion's tail, and then it's just stinging you. Or you could have like a big like a Stegosaurus style tail, a big vicious morning star-esque appendage, where it can shoot off spikes, and there's poison. The whole deal with the poison, of course, the Game of Thrones, they talk about the poison of the Manticore, and it's really a great thing to bring that poison, and you can change it up. See, that's a wonderful thing about a fantasy monster. You can change it up. Just taking a traditional D&D Manticore, knock the bat wings off, and throw a tiger's body on it. Maybe make the head an elf head, or like an elven woman's head with a scorpion tail. Or, you know, you could get that like Stegosaurus style tail, or like a big porcupine-esque sort of tail, or just throwing all these barbs off, launching them, and it hit people like, oh, and it starts itching like crazy, like, you know, itching. You know, so those are some of the ways you could dress him up, but we want to really talk about that in the way that you can make a Manticore different. Make it your own. That's a great thing with monsters. Don't run them as is out the book. Say, okay. And particularly when you can engage someone on a topic they understand. If you start describing a tiger's body, anyone can lock that in their head. An elven face, you can lock that in your head. A scorpion tail, lock it in your head. So the chimera really can work towards you, as opposed to being this weird kind of science fiction monster, which they might have a disconnect. They might not understand what you're explaining to them. Instead, what you're doing is you're bringing in concepts that they can root in and understand and build up, and the imagination comes all the stronger. And when you strongly engage imagination, that's important. And you want to also engage the smell of a Manticore. The smell, if you have like a dragon aspect to it, the wings and so forth, they bring in that lizardy type smell, or that smell that's like a bat, and that smell is like a cat, and that smell is like a musky humanoid. And those scents, that body odor, those can engage different when you start engaging. Remember, this is really a key to memory and a key to engaging the imagination. 5 sense stimulation, and the closest you can get to that, the number of senses you can engage, always help your descriptor. Always bring it in, always make it visceral, always make it real, always make it in your face, pulse pounding excitement, pulse pounding horror. And you want to thrill them, and you want to horrify them, because the Manticore itself comes from the original of the Manticore, man-eater. So it wants to eat you. It is into anthrophagia. It is into devouring your very flesh, devouring the flesh of the sapient. It loves it. It can't get enough of it, and it wants to eat you. And then that sort of primitive primal fear is a wonderful thing to put in there. When a monster wants to beat you up to take your gold or enslave you, that's one thing. It's another thing when the monster wants to eat you. That means the Manticore, it's gonna get you down. It's not looking to fight the whole party after it knocks someone out. It's looking to knock down whoever's the weakest and carry them off and eat them somewhere else, or pull you off of the high grass. Or if it has a long bat, the long dragon wings, eagle wings, whatever you want to put on the Manticore, dress it up, make it your own. It's gonna attack someone, beat them down, the weakest, the strongest, the least threatening, the least heavy weaponed. That's you, wizard. That's you, halfling, and rightfully so. The Manticore is going to get on that character. It's going to knock him out. It's going to fly off. It shouldn't sit there and fight one. You got to remember that in your fighting strategy, monsters have to fight correctly. Some monsters might be perfectly fine. You know, your orcs or hobgoblins who want to actually take slaves afterwards, of not killing you. The Manticore wants to knock one of you down, knock one of you out possibly, savage you, pull you off, and eat you. That is its reason for getting there. It is the man-eater. Believe that, and that is the whole core of the thing. The fear, the prowess, the myth. And you can have the bards, you can have the tavern tellers talk about the man-eater from generations past out there. You know, cryptozoology it. And have them adventure over like 3 game sessions out there in the high grass with the windswept peaks, with painting the picture of the sunsets in the forbidden forest and the Isles of Despair. Bring it all in, baby, and bring them the Manticore. Bring them this fear, this fact that once they encounter something, it may be a thing that was stalking them all along. It might be the Manticore who put it upon them. While they were looking for it, it was looking for them, but it was a circle. It is a vicious circle, and a circle is the Manticore's mouth. A mouth full of vicious, horrible teeth. Sometimes even described as 3 rings of shark's teeth. And that's a sort of description I've liked to use as well myself for dragons in the past. Because a shark, if you look in the mouth, it's just such a horrible, vicious thing. That's why, I think sharks resonate on such a horror level. But a shark that moves around on not only the land, but possibly in the air, or if by springing or jumping or even flying, that brings a whole nother level to it. So we've kind of talked about how to sort of use it in combat situations, how to dress it up, how to make it your own. And each Manticore can be very different. Each Manticore can be yours in a very, very different way. So I think that's important to do. And you want to see how intelligent you want to make it. So ecologizing it really comes down to those first decisions. Typically, though, the Manticore is a thing that's going to be encountered isolated, alone. But you could have pairs of them. You could have a whole brood of family. You could make them pride animals like lions and really engage them on that way. So, this has been your main man ecologizing for you, the Manticore. Think about putting it in a desolate place, putting it out there, having it stalk the party, having it be something, and come up with a reason why it was created. Was it created by a god, and what god created, and then put it in that pantheon? Maybe it's a servant of a god, or maybe it was something that was transmogrified, a villain, or a hero that fell, or perhaps a hero who's immortalized. And within the Ring of Fire, available now, drive through RPG, or hit your main man directly, and you can get yourself PDF copies like that. So, within the Ring of Fire, the Manticore itself is a great Farum king, and his name was Manticore. And so we work backwards instead of the other way. So eventually his greed, his desire begins to make him monstrous, begins to transform him, his effrontery to those elder divine things that did inspire his birth. worked against him, but he was transmogrified. So you can make it something like that, where it's a punishment, where there's a one of. There's one of in the entire world. Or it could be a certain sort of punishment, sort of like a vampirism that has affected individuals and bloats them up, sort of like a drider. You know, a curse of a god to say, you are a priest who's failed me. You are a hero who has betrayed me. You're someone who has made me angry. And I take you, you know, like Clash of Titans, I just start reforming the clay. It's like, oh, I'm a Manticore. So I think it's a really interesting mythology and a great way to explain why maybe there's only 17 Manticores in the whole of your world. Otherwise, you know, you can make Manticores a naturally evolved creature. You can make Manticores the smartest people, and they have their own churches, their own faith, their own gods, or they worship gods in a certain way. So it'd be a very interesting thing if you go into like a very savage sort of temple of Bane, and in there's like a Manticore priest, like, well, what's wrong, God? And you're like, oh! And then he eats you, because you probably shouldn't have punched a Manticore.